the Meidas Touch network. Donald Trump gave a completely vile, depraved, and disgusting speech in Philadelphia on Friday. He was greeted to boos and getting cursed at. And disgusting speech in Philadelphia on Friday. He was greeted to boos and getting cursed at. In Philadelphia on Friday, he was greeted to boos and getting cursed at. He was greeted to boos and getting cursed at before he arrived at the Moms of Liberty convention, where the group talked about how they could ban more books and try to prevent diversity in education.
But Moms for Liberty says its mission is to defend parents' rights in education.
Moms of Liberty convention, where the group talked about how they could ban more books. And
first, I'd like to say that no one is looking to ban books. And Moms for Liberty certainly isn't.
The group talked about how they could ban more books. And
so we're not advocating for banning anything. What we're talking about is curating content in a library. You wouldn't have the same books in a medical college that you would in a seminary. And just because a book is printed doesn't mean that it belongs in a children's library.
The group talked about how they could ban more books. And
somehow these books with these horribly explicit graphic content are finding their way onto bookshelves in public schools all over America.
They could ban more books. And
they are obscene and they are pornographic. This
celebrated the horrific Supreme Court rulings that has taken away people's freedom.
And yesterday, as an example, they ruled, such a big ruling, to set our country back on a merit-based system of education. If you've worked hard, gotten fantastic marks, done well on all of the other various things that you have to do well on, somebody that hasn't done nearly as well, who perhaps has not worked as hard, will not be taking your place on a school, college, or university roster any longer.
You know, you have the Democrats talking about jobs and education and lowering prescription drug prices and focusing on veterans and seniors and protecting Social Security and protecting Medicare.
But who wants open borders? Who wants no voter ID? Who wants high taxes? Who wants high interest? Nobody can buy a house now because interest rates are so high. We were energy independent a little while ago. Now we're begging for energy from Venezuela. We will put parents first, we will put children first, and we will put America first again.
And protecting Medicare. Donald Trump in this speech, I'm just going to obliterate the deep state. Here, play this clip.
When I get back at the Oval Office, I will totally obliterate the deep state.
He started this video off by talking about how Donald Trump had a bad reception in Philadelphia.
Disgusting speech in Philadelphia on Friday.
Read the bottom rail here. Trump gives off the rail nut speech in Philadelphia. Well, this clip is the Faith and Freedom Coalition was in Washington. It wasn't in Philadelphia. They are the most dishonest pieces of crap I have ever seen in my life. All they do is lie and smear people, and they feed their base nothing but misinformation. You have got to be half stupid to be a Democrat.
In this next clip, it seems like Donald Trump briefly glitches out and admits that he lost the 2020 election. Play this clip.
2020, we thought we won. I mean, I didn't talk about the election too much because I thought we won that election so easy we were going to win it.
In this next clip, Trump...
Hold up. Nice try there, Libtard. Did you notice that he went back to the Philadelphia speech? He tried to pull a fast one on you guys with some very selective editing.
Seems like Donald Trump briefly glitches out and admits that he lost the 2020 election.
They want to interfere with the election. They rigged the presidential election of 2020.
Admits that he lost the 2020 election.
They rigged the presidential election of 2020. And we're not going to allow them to rig the presidential election of 2024. We're not going to allow it.
In this next clip, Trump tells the Mom for Liberty audience that if he were to be elected, His policy would be allowing parents to elect principals of schools.
Implement the direct election of school principals by the parents. It's all about the parents for their children. More than anyone else, parents know what their children need. If any principal is not getting the job done, the parents should be able to vote to fire them and select someone who will.
Don't they want to ban the Department of Education?
Across the country, we need to implement strict prohibitions on teaching inappropriate racial, sexual, and political material to America's school children in any form whatsoever. And if federal bureaucrats are going to push this radicalism, we should abolish the Department of Education.
Don't they want to ban the Department of Education? They just don't understand the way government works and just...
This will be the ultimate form of local control. And at the end of the day, if we have pink-haired communists teaching our kids, we have a major problem.
Have the most bizarre and dangerous policies.
We will cut federal funding for any school or program pushing critical race theory, gender ideology, or other inappropriate racial, sexual, or political content onto our children. We're not going to allow it to happen.
It was Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, said that, 1/3 of the things that Donald Trump asked us to do was illegal. The other 1/3 of things he asked us to do was impossible. And the other 1/3 of things was just completely and utterly stupid and bafflingly dumb. Came from Donald Trump's former chief of staff.
Here's the thing. I know John Kelly. He was with me, didn't do a good job, had no temperament, and ultimately he was petered out. He was exhausted. This man was totally exhausted. He wasn't even able to function in the last number of months. He was not able to function. He was sort of a tough guy. By the time he got eaten up in this world, it's a different world than he was used to, he was unable to function. And I told him, John, you're going to have to go. Please give me a letter of resignation. And we did that. And now he goes out and badmouths.
Do you think that his chief of staff, John Kelly, was trying to undermine the president?
I think that they were going in their own policy direction.
John Kelly said that, 1/3 of the things that Donald Trump asked us to do was illegal.
63 million Americans voted for Donald Trump for president. So he's the guy, and he is the president. He sets American foreign policy, at not a bunch of career bureaucrats, not even military. Everybody should take an oath of office, and they do, to say that they defend the Constitution and they work for the president. When he does set policy, they should not go around his back and try to sabotage, which is what the National Security Council did.
Let's make our economy work for most Americans, for 99% of Americans. Let's focus on making it work for all Americans, not just the 1%. Just think about the Democratic message. Just let's do things for people.
Here's what my administration is going to do to provide more breathing room for people so they have less burden by student debt.
The Supreme Court strikes that down.
My campaign for president, I made a commitment. That would provide student debt relief. And I'm honoring that commitment today. Using the authority Congress granted the Department of Education, we will forgive $10,000 in outstanding federal student loans.
The Supreme Court strikes that down because it says that President Biden and his Secretary of Education exceeded the authority that the law passed by Congress gave them.
The Democratic message, just let's do things for people.
President Biden's catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan is a disgrace that has now resulted in the tragic loss of American lives.
It's let's do things for people.
Our so-called commander-in-chief is abandoning Americans, our Afghan allies and members of NATO who only came to Afghanistan to help us. We are in a crisis of leadership. President Joe Biden has failed.
Let's do things for people.
The number of migrants now breaking records even before Title 42 expires. Yesterday, more than 11,000 illegal border crossings in just 24 hours. CBP processing centers over capacity.
Let's do things for people.
Men, women, and children are waiting in 90-degree heat with no shade, hoping that they'll be allowed in to get processed.
Let's do things for people.
Compare the 59,000 deportations to the numbers of migrants encountered. As you can see, 2021, record number of migrants encountered, 1.7 million, and an all-time or near all-time low of deportations, just 59,000.
Like, let's do things for people.
Inflation nation. Americans are paying significantly more for basics such as food, fuel, and rent. The Consumer Price Index rose 8.6% in May to a new 40-year high.
Like, let's do things for people.
LA County's last count, 75,518 people were living in interim housing or a tent, a car, a van, an RV, or makeshift shelter. And that was in LA County, compared with 69,144 the previous year. So this is insane. So now why is this happening? Oh, is it Trump's fault?
Like, let's do things for people.
Well, who runs LA? Who runs California? Those are the questions we have to ask. We know who they are. They're Democrats. And they like to tax, regulate, and spend the city and the state into oblivion. And look, they wanted that. They voted for it, and they got it.
Oh, by the way, on a related note, there is Walt Nauta, spotted Donald Trump's co-defendant, who apparently has time to get a cheesesteak at Pat King of Steaks in Philadelphia, but was not able to secure a lawyer at the last date of his arraignment. By the way, Walt Nauta is going to go to jail for a really long time. Walt Nauta is like, going to go to jail, I think, for decades based on the crimes that he committed.
Who cares that they got a sandwich? Why is that even mentioned? They got a sandwich. Whoop-de-doo. Now, someone explain to me, how come this greasy-headed, lying, left-wing kook is so giddy, so humored by someone else's legal troubles? I'm not familiar with the details in the particular case, but I do know he has a right to be presumed innocent. He has not been convicted of anything, and the word alleged should be used. This dishonest, lying, smarmy mole rat did not use the word alleged. Would he be so humored if this was Hunter Biden?
Walt Nauta is like, going to go to jail, I think, for decades based on the crimes that he committed.
Because the security state is very skilled at psychological warfare. They're skilled at the art and artistry that's often deployed in foreign countries of how to control the narrative in our country. My message to the American people is, don't fall for it. We have been watching them try to play us year after year after year, going all the way back to the Russia hoax. Then, of course, remember the Ukraine hoax. Remember, in the election year, remember the Russian bounty story, where Trump was letting Russia get away with putting bounties on our troops. Then it comes out later, that was a fake story. And, of course, we remember what they did to suppress the Hunter Biden story, and now what they are doing and have been doing to shield Joe Biden from accountability for his influence peddling with his son Hunter.
Oh, and here we got Donald Trump talking about how bragging about the Supreme Court's recent rulings that have taken away people's freedoms, these radical, extreme Supreme Court rulings.
They're mad that universities can no longer discriminate based on race. They're upset that the court followed the original meaning of the Equal Protection Clause.
What horrific decisions reached this week. The Supreme Court striking down President Biden's student debt relief program.
They could have eliminated student loans through legislation, or at least tried to do that, but they didn't. Instead, they pretended to do something that never had a chance of surviving school court scrutiny. So if you're someone who voted for the Democrats because you thought your student loans were going to be forgiven, or if you voted for Democrats because you thought that you're going to get a big pile of money in the form of reparations, well, I'm here to tell you that you were played for a fool. The left knew exactly what they were doing. They knew that this wasn't going to, in any way be upheld by the court, and they don't have any intention of writing checks to anyone.
The Supreme Court stating that businesses that are open to the public can discriminate against protected groups by just claiming that it's their First Amendment right, and they could put signs on that they don't want to do business with the LGBTQ plus community and that they have a free speech right to do that as part of their creative talents. That's what the Supreme Court ruled. The Supreme Court ruled that colleges can't even factor in diversity in making admissions decisions at all a departure from decades and decades of precedent. And of course, you've got last year's Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade.
Remember, they only respect judicial decisions they agree with, maybe like the gay marriage case or the state voting rules cases handed down earlier this week. As for the Constitution, a lot of those same radicals believe it's a document that was written by a bunch of old dead white guys, so its words need to be kind of like silly putty. You can just flex them and stretch them as much as you want to fit any situation. And if the court doesn't rule accordingly, well, it's just illegitimate.
By the way, when I say the Supreme Court, these are 6-3 decisions with these 6 justices appointed by MAGA Republicans like Donald Trump, or before that, George W. Bush, or even George H.W. Bush. The 6 are radical right extremist Republicans who are just overturning all precedent and creating this dystopia.
Are Americans to be perpetually divided by race? The elites say yes, but a good majority of Americans and 6 Supreme Court justices on the court say no.
That's why it is so important and so critical that we vote and make sure that Supreme Court justices and judges are reflective of true freedom and democracy and not these radical Trump judges.
They do so because they want to keep the people scared and divided.
6 are radical right extremist Republicans who are just overturning all precedent and creating this dystopia.
After decades of Democrats in charge and their fake appeals for racial healing, what's happened to urban America? It's worse. It's worse off, not better off.
That's why it is so important and so critical. Supreme Court justices and judges are reflective of true freedom and democracy.
The left fears what we're building. A multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition that believes in helping American workers and upholding our Constitution.
I am your voice.
In there fighting, they feel, and there's a lot of people that know what everybody. So they all know Trump won.
Come on, I got you. Good stuff, right?
Yes.
Great stuff.
There you go. My foot, okay.